Hello and welcome back to Every Horror Movie on Netflix, the podcast where we watch, review, and discuss every goddamn horror movie on Netflix. I'm Steven. As always, I'm here with my friends and co-hosts Patrick.
Hello.
And Chris.
Hi.
And we're at the bar because COVID restrictions are pretty much completely lifted in Michigan at this point, and we're also reviewing El Bar, a.k.a. The Bar, the 2017 Alex de la Iglesia film. So what are you guys drinking?
It's been a long time. It's been a long time since I've been at the bar with my boys. Very excited.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
So
love to get down to the bar, drink some brews with my boys.
Some brews. So what kind of brew are you drinking? You gonna answer my question or what?
I'm drinking Labatt. Drinking 4 Labatt.
4? And the plural of Labatt is just Labatt. To be clear.
It's like vinyl.
And the singular of Labatt is Labatts.
Don't say vinyls ever, Patrick. Patrick, what are you drinking?
I was drinking a rum and ginger, but now I'm drinking rum and Coke because I need that little extra jolt of energy, you know. And I've got I have some cocaine also on the side just in case I need even more energy.
Whoa.
No, not really. Not really.
Look at Eric Clapton over here. Damn.
I'm going to say it's true what they say about the gateway drug.
Hey, you know, it's getting crazy out here tonight at the Land Shark.
Oh, zing.
Damn.
Topical Michigan joke there.
The Michigan's very own Bill Maher over here.
Oh, no, that's you, bud.
Well, enough about Bill Maher. I've got an organic rosé over here on my end.
Oh, yes, we didn't ask what Steven was drinking.
Yeah, we've been at the bar for a little while, guys, just to give you a heads up, if you can't tell. So, you know, at the beginning of every episode, we like to just kind of catch up, talk about what other horror-related adventures we may have been on in the past couple of weeks, unrelated to the homework at hand. Have any of you guys seen anything spooky lately? Experienced anything spooky in real life?
Yes, I have.
Yes.
What do you got, Patrick?
I followed through on the assignment that we, I don't know, I feel like some of us half-assedly committed to at the end of the Blair Witch Project episode, and then some of our fans, kind of held our feet to the fire and were like, okay, follow through and watch the Blair Witch sequel. So I did follow through on part of that assignment. I watched, and I already forget how this title is sequenced. I think it's Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2. I think it omits the word project, but whatever.
Right.
It's Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2. And you know what? It was wild. It could not have been more different from the original Blair Witch Project, and I admired that they didn't just crank out another found footage, piece of product. It's not good, but it was interesting and weird and over the top and kind of campy, and I'm glad I watched it. So thanks to those who, said, hey, watch this shit.
I also watched Blair Witch 2. Not very good. It's a batshit movie. I will give it points for that. If it were the Oscars of what movie is the most batshit, Blair Witch would be nominated in all categories.
Oh, it's batshit as fuck. And I mean, the ending has big Saw energy.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have much to say about it. I'm glad we didn't watch it for the show.
Oh my god, that reminds me, we saw Spiral from the Book of Saw since last episode too, Chris.
Oh, yeah. We saw it in the theater. We went in the afternoon. We had our popcorn. We had our candy. We had our vitamin water.
Yeah.
I smuggled in a LaCroix, and we watched Spiral from the Book of Saw. And, I, for one, as a Saw fan, as a Saw aficionado, I got nothing to complain about. Was it the best movie I've ever seen? Hell, of course not. But was it a satisfying continuation of the Saw soap opera legacy? To some extent. It was fine. I said I watched some traps. I saw some shit. I ate some candy.
Did not work for me quite as well. It tries real hard to be woke and to have some political commentary on racial injustice, police brutality. But we know how well Saw handles political issues from Saw 5's handling of the healthcare debate.
Saw 6.
Saw 6. Oh, I'm sorry. Its political acumen has not gotten any greater since that installment. It is pretty heavy-handed, and the ending is just a big, big fucking nope for me. But Chris Rock, entertaining. There's a couple of good traps in it. Oddly light on interesting traps. Overall, a bit of a disappointment for me. But it was great to go to the theater, get back in the theater again, especially with Chris, who I hadn't seen in person in a while.
Well, the political commentary of the movie, this was a movie originally scheduled to come out in May 2020. So when you have a movie that's tackling issues of police brutality, and it kind of tiptoes around race, but maybe it's there in the subtext, the conversation has changed so much in the last year that anything you made back then is probably going to seem a little anachronistic today.
I hadn't even thought about that. That just honestly makes me feel like they just should have mothballed that thing and just gone, or sent it direct to video or something.
Yeah.
It is just really misguided, especially in the lens of everything that's happened since.
I agree. And the ending, I agree with you. The ending was
woof.
Woof. All I'll say is there's certain imagery that is so emotionally charged that you should not use it unless you have an artist's hand that is a little bit more refined than what we can expect from Darren Lynn Bousman and the people who made Spiral from the Book of Saw. God bless them all otherwise.
Well, now I want to see it. You finally sold me on the Saw franchise.
Oh boy, yeah, we could probably recommend a better entry point into the Saw cinematic universe. I also want to give a shout out, as usual, to a comic book. The new title, Red Room, from Ed Piskor, who is a phenomenal cartoonist who did the Hip Hop Family Tree and X-Men Grand Design comics, and also hosts the Cartoonist Kayfabe podcast. Just a phenomenally talented dude who really knows his way around the art form. And his new book is hardcore, grisly, violent horror. Kind of the tagline is murder on the dark web for fun and profit. And it's about this kind of series of dark web chat rooms where live murders are performed for people who tip Bitcoin. And it's going to be, I think, sort of a series of self-contained sort of anthology-like stories about people and characters who revolve around this whole universe. It is gnarly. It is violent. There are horrifying kills rendered with brilliant, like R. Crumb level grossness and detail. It left me a little lacking on the character side, I will say, but I fucking love Ed's cartooning, and I love that he's doing a horror book, and that it's been selling so well. It's like the best-selling comic in Fantagraphics history, which Fantagraphics is a very big indie comic book publisher. So glad that it's working out well for him, and go check it out if grisly murder is your thing.
What if I told you the same concept was used in an episode of Millennium in the year 1998?
I'd say that sounds like something you would say, Chris.
Steven, what have you been injecting into your brain lately?
I mean, like Chris, I've been watching Joe Bob on Shudder. I usually make it through the first feature and then catch up with the second when everything drops on late Saturday or Sunday. I'd seen Maniac Cop before, directed by Bill Lustig, written by Larry Cohen, one of my favorite directors. And it was still a blast. Everybody should see Maniac Cop. I don't think I'd ever seen Maniac Cop 2 before, or if I had, I didn't remember much of it, except for a couple of famous images. I think it might even be a better movie than the first Maniac Cop. Chris and I can maybe debate offline about that.
So kind of like Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2.
Sure. But both amazing movies. And the other night I revisited Mandy with Joe Bob.
Yes.
I saw Mandy in the theater sober, which I think was a huge mistake. I appreciated so many things about it. I mean, it's a movie that like is almost too perfect on paper to disappoint me, even if the execution isn't great. But I definitely wasn't quite in the right headspace. I was definitely with the wrong person when I saw it, and I started to kind of fade in and out during the film, as midway through the second act. This time around, had a gummy. and was immediately drawn in, and I absolutely loved the film this time around. I went from being kind of lukewarm to this is a legitimate masterpiece, and it's probably going to take another 10 years, but I cannot wait to see what else comes out of Panos Cosmatos' brain.
Oh, love that movie. Loved it in the theater when I saw it. I was also sober when I saw it. Rewatched it recently after getting a little high, and it was delightful in a whole different way.
Yeah, good shit. So that's all I've got.
I concur with the Maniac Cop. I enjoyed Maniac Cop and Maniac Cop 2. They were great, and, maybe more on point and timely commentary about the police than you would find in Spiral from the Book of Saw.
From the sounds of it, yeah. All right, so let's get to the topic at hand. The Bar, Alex de la Iglesia, 2017. I chose this movie for this episode.
Why?
A couple of reasons. One, there wasn't, this is becoming a theme, there wasn't much on Netflix that I wanted to see, and this title stood out to me as I was kind of last minute selecting a movie, and I realized it was because I've been kind of fascinated with Alex de la Iglesia. Dr. Rebecca McHenry on the Shockwaves podcast, Now Colors of the Dark, has been talking about two of his films for years, and they both sounded utterly fascinating to me. He's a Spanish director. The first film of his that kind of drew my interest was The Day of the Beast, which I've talked about on the podcast before. It's a Christmas Eve set sort of Catholic horror movie about a priest who finds out that the end times are coming, the devil's going to arrive on Earth, and he knows how to stop the devil, but he has to attract the devil and be in his presence, so he commits as many sins as possible on Christmas Eve with the hopes of actually being able to confront the devil when he arrives. Really great, fun, bonkers movie, very stylishly directed. The other is Perdita Durango, which is a 1997 movie with Javier Bardem and Rosie Perez, and it is adapted from the sequel to the novel that David Lynch's Wild at Heart was based on. I just watched it today, finally. It's not as good, it's kind of shapeless, but there's a lot of great horror stuff in it. And then I realized, I know about The Bar because I looked this guy up before, and I'm interested in his movies. So that's why I chose it. It wasn't just for the joke of Michigan returning back to normal and we can go to bars now. So what we get with this movie is it's basically a bunch of ciphers on the street of Madrid who wander into a bar. A couple of people walk out. They get shot mysteriously. Is there a sniper? What's going on? The same group, the survivors get trapped in the bar. The strange things start to happen outside. The entire sort of courtyard area is suddenly devoid of human beings. The military shows up and they light a tire fire to try and make it seem like these murders never happened. And we're left with this group of people becoming increasingly tense about what they should do in this precarious situation while they're locked inside.
Yeah, it's basically one of those self-contained thriller-type movies that we've seen before where you have kind of a small cast of characters stuck in one spot and lots of interpersonal drama. Reminded me a lot of Await Further Instructions. And so our main cast is basically we have a young woman who stopped in the bar on her way to a date, and she's kind of our... I wouldn't say protagonist. It's very much an ensemble piece, but she's the character that we kind of follow the perspective of the most.
Yeah. We
have a young professional who works in technology, who's just kind of there in the bar working. We have a middle-aged woman who's there mostly for the slot machine. We have a couple middle-aged guys. One's a businessman, one's a retired police officer, and we have the barkeep, who's maybe a 60 or 70-year-old woman, and we have her employee, who's like the short order cook / bartender, and then a couple other minor characters who kind of come in and out early on before everything.
The homeless guy,
and the vagrant,
the
how could we forget? How could we forget?
Very important.
Catholicism's answer to Joker in the form of
Jesus Christ,
this wiry kind of homeless guy who is a little bit crazy, but maybe not. Maybe he's crazy like a fox. We don't know. And he's unpredictable and chaotic and damaged.
Damn
Yeah,
it.
and you know, Chris, you did a wonderful job of summing up these characters because, you know, I refer to them as ciphers right out the gate because these are not terribly well developed characters.
Not at first.
Most of them fit into pretty convenient stereotypes, and I would agree that most of them aren't very well developed by the end either, or argue, is what I meant to say.
So one of the interesting things to me about this movie is that I believe it's billed as a comedy, or I had heard, I don't know, maybe Steven, you described it as a comedy. I don't know. I at least had the idea in my head
It's
that
a
it was
dark
going
comedy,
to be horror,
yeah.
horror comedy was what I was expecting. And is what I got to a certain degree for like maybe the first 20 minutes, but there's this really interesting effect of the comedy like starting out at a fairly like middling level, and it just tanks. Like the level of comedy just goes down over the course of the movie until at the end it is not funny at all, and it is just excruciating and dark, which I found interesting. But at least at the beginning it is funny, and there were a few things that I laughed at, and it even specifically reminded me of Edgar Wright. Like he has that same sort of like snappy editing, like some fairly kinetic camera movement within the, you know, the very small, like cramped environment of the bar. And I was feeling that vibe. It was actually, especially with the you know, threat of a zombie-like sort of thing going on around them, it reminded me a lot of Shaun of the Dead, and I was digging that vibe early on.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of mystery and intrigue at the beginning because you don't really know, at least I didn't know going into it, had some assumptions, but like, what is the horror going to be, you know, because we see these two people get shot, you know, within the first 10 minutes as they leave the bar. One walks out, gets hit by a bullet, another person goes out to check on him, he gets shot as well, then the streets are cleared, and you're like...
I was hoping it was Kiefer Sutherland. I was hoping it was Phone Booth 2, and they were just going to be stuck in a bar.
Oh, well, back to Larry Cohen. Nice. So there's a little bit of mystery, like you're kind of with the characters. I felt sort of with them in the first like third of this movie, like kind of just as confused as they are about what's going on. How do we even find out? It's clearly not safe to leave. Nobody has a working cell phone. So they're pretty well trapped, and then of course they start to kind of, you know, it's like The Mist or any one of those sorts of kinds of stories where they're all suspicious of each other. They suspect one of them to be a terrorist. It turns out he just does like advertisements for major companies, and he has this external hard drive that he's worried they're going to think is a bomb.
Well, and the thing that's sort of like, because you know, of course, you have to have a plot device to keep these 8 people or however many people it is inside this space, and the device that accomplishes that is they decide, or one of the characters kind of whips them up into this terror that one of them is, as you said, Stephen, a terrorist, and that the police are basically sitting outside the restaurant waiting to just snipe anyone who comes out, assuming that they're going to hit a terrorist. And that was just existing on this, like, it was just teetering on the brink for me of like me buying it versus me going, okay, like somebody in here has to go, no, that's bullshit, I'm leaving the restaurant. Like there's no reason to stay in the bar, you know?
I'm with you in that it's fairly contrived, but also like we have established that like it's getting real weird outside. Like they've seen the 2 people who have walked out have both been immediately shot. Then the streets are cleared. Then the SWAT team comes in and sets a tire fire where the bodies were, and we're not sure exactly what the motivation for that is in the moment. Chances are not good of surviving leaving this bar. So what do? They do what I think comes fairly natural, which is to suspect that, okay, one of us is the reason. We just need to figure out who it is. And I don't even know what they would do at that point if they did.
So, I mean, it's a movie where the actual threat, you know, they try to figure out what it is. I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say that it may be biological. I mean, the opening credits of this movie are all about germy things. And things like that.
That's right.
I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say we never really find out. Like, this movie does not really offer answers in the end. It offers a lot of theorizing among the characters, but you never quite figure out what the hell is going on.
Right, and I really appreciate that. And I don't know how much we can get into everything before we go to the spoiler room, but I mean, it's all quite arbitrary. Really, the horror here is what people do to each other when you subject them to a little bit of fear or a little bit of stress or a little bit of a reason to not trust each other.
Yeah.
And it's, they invoke, they talk explicitly about, kind of the threat of terrorism and the Paris attacks and stuff like that. Certainly watching this today, you can think about, the COVID pandemic.
Of course. Yeah.
So I don't know. I thought that was all kind of interesting. This movie, I think, is very about who people are, the nature of humanity once you strip them down to their psychological or physical underwear.
To their olive oil soaked, canola oil soaked underwear.
Oh, yeah. God. Yeah, we'll get into that.
We will.
But they find, at one point, pretty early on, they find someone who appears to be dead in the bathroom. They also find a mysterious syringe along with him, and they discover that they kind of drag him out. He says, "Don't touch me." He looks like he has been affected by some kind of virus. He looks very zombie-esque. And
his eyes are bulging in a way that
almost comically.
I loved the design of that. I've never seen something like that, because it clearly was not CG. I loved that. And he's got he's just got these giant pustules that are not, they were large, but also not pronounced. It was just you could barely see the pus under the skin, even though it was golf ball sized. It was so disgusting. I was just waiting for one of those to burst. They never did, but the visual that I had in my head of it was surely more disgusting than anything they actually could have shown me.
Yeah, he's got a bloated neck. He looks like how Stephen King describes the victims of the plague in The Stand. And I did enjoy the design and the practical nature of it. But when part of the group, I believe 5 of them, find themselves interacting very closely with this corpse, they are sent down to the basement because they might be infected by whatever is going on with him, and we spend a great deal of the movie in an even more claustrophobic space down there as they try and figure out what's going on up above. Is it safe to try and get out?
It's a hard movie to talk about.
Yeah. I think part of the reason that's a problem with this movie, and I'll go back to character. I just didn't find any of these characters compelling enough, or the drama between them compelling enough to really follow. I think I was mostly going along with the kind of over-the-top escalating tension and the moments that are derived from that happen periodically throughout the film. But there's very little else to kind of guide me along on this journey, or to really think about all too deeply.
I think this movie probably would have benefited a lot more from having a clear-cut protagonist. I'm thinking about Await Further Instructions. It's the most natural comparison of the movies we've seen recently, where, you had the young couple who you were clearly with on their side. And, I think that helped a lot in terms of this movie, where, as opposed to this movie where it's just kind of throwing these characters at you, and it's an ensemble, but I think the movie wants you to be suspicious of everybody. Yeah. So it doesn't really want to give you a lot to attach to any individual character, but it's just all kind of there. And I don't really care until much later on, if anyone lives or dies.
Oh, yeah. It's not until the third act that I really start to get invested in anyone, completely. Mm-hmm. I think what this movie needed was a stronger scapegoat. If they had taken, I don't know, just throwing this off the top of my head, not sure if it's a good idea or not, but if they had taken the terrorist angle, and we as the audience actually are meant to believe for a while that might be a legitimate threat, there might be a little more drama here to discuss. But that doesn't happen. That notion is dispelled pretty quickly, and then we're just left with a bunch of bickering, essentially.
Yeah, and not only does it not give us a ton to go on with the characters, but also it doesn't give us a ton to go on thematically, which is frustrating because it kind of stirs the pot a lot. It throws some things in your face. There's talk about terrorists. There's talk about a man with a beard being judged and assumed that he's the terrorist because he has the beard. We find out that whatever this strange biological phenomenon is originated from Africa and people specifically reference that, like, it came from black people. There were black people associated with it. But that also is, like, it's there, and it's almost like, oh, are we going to comment on the racist association these people are making? But that's just kind of left on the table, too. We've got the homeless guy who we've mentioned, and at one point, you know, he seems to have a certain level of, like, knowledge, whether it's just mania or his out-of-control spirituality, I guess, about what's going on. And at one point, he calls out the group for judging him for being, you know, homeless and destitute and down on his luck. But again, that doesn't really get played out because he just turns out to be exactly like the psychotic, terrible person who everyone assumes him to be in the first place. So I don't know. It's just all kind of stirring the pot and, like, attempting to play with some social issues, but it either just deserts those points, those sort of theses that it sets up, or otherwise kind of delivers on, like, the grossest possible interpretation of them. And by the end of the movie, like, the ending, we'll get to it. I'm not going to go into any detail about it, but to me, it just felt like a grand, like, just kind of throwing up our hands. We're done. All right, it's over.
100%. It was like whoever wrote this movie and the director, I don't know, like, I struggle to even think of, like, what is the motivation to make a film like this? That is, I almost want to say it's purely nihilistic, but it's not. Like, it doesn't even commit to that angle. Like, I would have loved if the ending was something like how The Mist ends, which is a movie that I thought of so many times during this, just because it is one of those more recent kind of quintessential human beings trapped in a horrible situation that there doesn't seem to be any kind of positive outcome from, and how do they treat each other? You know, what, like Chris said, like stripping down to their sort of psychological underwear. But it only kind of, like, lightly touches on the darker aspects of human nature and this and the social and political issues that are at hand.
I mean, I think the impetus for the movie is the desire to kind of, you know, make, like, Lord of the Flies or something, to make a statement about people and isolation and alienation and the state we find ourselves in modern society. And I think it's criticizing all of us kind of through that lens. And it did work for me. I mean, again, largely, I think because of the place we find ourselves in, watching this, you know, during a pandemic, where we've seen a lot of indifference to our neighbors. We've seen how our so-called communities and so-called society are not that well held together by their constituents. Like, you know, lots of people given the chance to wear a mask, inconvenience themselves with a mask, or possibly kill some people they don't know, choose to kill people they don't know. You know.
Well, I mean, one thing that I rewatched I'd say about half of the movie today. I skipped a few parts. But I did find the introductions to most of these characters to kind of establish them as, like, you know, if not unlikable, just kind of like, oh, you know, like the ad exec is just kind of like, you know, he's just like kind of a hipster douchebag.
Well, and he's also feeling up Elena all the time.
Oh, yeah, exactly. He's just like, and I don't even know how to read that, honestly. And is it like is he a scumbag, or is it just that, like, he's lonely and he thinks he's gonna die here, so he decides to try and make some awkward moves? Like, the movie doesn't seem to really commit to how it wants us to feel about that interaction. But she also is a complete scumbag, and I don't know that she ever fully redeems herself.
The only person who's not a scumbag, in my opinion, is the fry cook.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, yes, you're right. You know? You're right.
The working class guy who's just there because I'm just here so I get paid.
Satur, I think his name was.
Yeah. He's a good soul. He's mostly like the voice of reason in this group because everyone else can't stop shouting when they're not supposed to be shouting, you know, and that sort of thing that I'm just tired of seeing in these sorts of movies, and it happens all too often in this one. He was chill. He was chill.
Is it a coincidence that the moral voice of reason is the lowly working wage earner guy?
Probably not, but I don't think the script really sets it up.
No,
to ask us to have that debate, you know?
These are things that play out in my head as I'm watching the movie. I mean, the movie, it stirs the pot, you know, and I agree with Patrick and with you that there's not a lot of coherency in the movie, but it, you know, for me, it did make me think about things.
Well, if you look hard enough, you'll find something.
Yeah.
And I think some of that, you're not off base. I mean, I think that kind of class commentary is half-baked into this movie. It just seems to really kind of toe the line. Like, does it want to be a claustrophobic thriller and purely that, and also kind of a mystery, or does it also want to, you know, feed us a little something to chew on?
Yeah.
And I'd say there's less of the latter.
The thematic stuff can be there and then just not really be that profound or good or well developed, and I guess that's kind of how I feel about the whole movie, where it's certainly a passable movie. It's just things just aren't really developed, and especially when it's something that we're so familiar with. We've seen this movie before so many times that I really needed something. I needed a big moment. I mean, I watched these shitty exploitation movies on Joe Bob's show that are 90% terrible, but then they have one scene that I've never seen before in a movie, and it's incredible. And this movie did not give me that.
Oh, I would love to see Larry Cohen. I mean, I think like in his movies, every scene is memorable. It doesn't matter how mundane the setting is. Like, he throws you something. He gives you a bone. Yeah. This movie needed more of that energy, because you're right. We've seen this premise a billion times, and I don't know. This offers a couple of things I hadn't seen before. A couple of things that I don't even know if I liked, but they were impactful to me. But otherwise, it's pretty milquetoast.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There are a couple of things that I found memorable, including the bug-eyed leg zombie that we already talked about, and one other thing that we alluded to already, but I feel like maybe we're sort of saving for the spoiler room. But yeah, I mean, that whole, I don't know, the theme of, you know, what do people do when they're reduced, you know, when they don't have anybody to impress? Well, like, that's been done so many times, you know. I mean, you can even, we were talking about Saw already. Saw has done that a zillion times. And Saw, honestly, you know, I have watched the entire franchise. My opinions on it are mixed. But Saw even generally tends to do something more memorable with that, you know, rather hackneyed theme than this did. It just, I don't know, you can ask that question, but you have to have an answer to it, you know? And I don't know this has, I mean, I get this has an answer. It's just an answer that I've seen before, which is everybody is really shitty to each other and is just petty, squabbling pieces of trash.
Yeah, and then it kind of enters like Black Mirror territory for me, which I haven't watched a lot of Black Mirror, but what I have, the reason I haven't watched a lot of Black Mirror is because the Black Mirror episodes I've watched are very much like, hey, that thing that keeps you up at night in about society that like really bothers you, here it is. Look at it. Yeah. And it's like, I see it every fucking day. Like, why do I need this presented to me without, you know, an answer or a profound transformation or something witty about it? Just like showing me the whole does not is not entertaining.
That's a great comparison.
The worst episodes of Black Mirror kind of eschew what made the Twilight Zone so great, which is imagination and extrapolation and metaphor.
and the Twilight Zone, and this is a tangent, of course, but the Twilight Zone had a fundamental optimism about it that Black Mirror does not have. Rod Serling believed in the human condition. He believed in the goodness of people. He wasn't just like, you know, stare at the hole.
Yeah, I mean, he sent me on, well, not me, but he sent the viewer at the time on many a guilt trip, but it was always like with the fundamental hope that we can do better. And Black Mirror is just like, yeah, you're fucked. Think about that for a minute.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I'm a Black Mirror fan. There are episodes of Black Mirror that I think are fucking brilliant, but there is also a significant chunk of them that, are exactly what y'all are describing, and that's a really good comparison to this film. I mean, the worst episodes of Black Mirror, I feel like, just wallow in that negativity. I mean, you make a good point about Rod Serling, where, you know, I think Black Mirror, when it can't quite come up with an interesting point to make, it just goes, okay, well, let's just go for the most depraved fucking thing happening and the most pessimistic outcome to this whole scenario. Yeah. And that is kind of similarly my complaint with this movie as it goes along.
You know what? Don't get me wrong. The episodes of Black Mirror I've seen have been some of the finest hours of television I've ever seen. I love Black Mirror. I love the craftsmanship. It's just too bleak for me, so I don't want to go back and watch more of it.
Good Black Mirror is better than like any like science fiction that's been produced in film or television in the past 10 to 15 years. But it's rare that it really hits the mark. This movie definitely does not hit the mark for me. Do you guys want to review it? Because I do feel like there's little else to talk about without getting into some serious spoilers.
Yeah. Let's review it, and then maybe we can open things up a little bit when we stop being cagey about what happens.
Well, I'm the birthday boy, as it were. I chose this movie, so I'll go first. This is a screw it for me. This movie is like right around an hour and a half, and it felt fucking interminable. And part of that is like it's a movie with a lot of bickering and shouting and people making stupid decisions over and over and over again, and it just felt very tedious to me. It felt like there was not really a cohesive vision for what this thing was supposed to be, what it's meant to say, what kinds of questions it's meant to provoke. I thought the filmmaking was very sloppy. Patrick, I do think your Edgar Wright invocation earlier was pretty on point in moments, but I think for the most part, this is just an ugly, poorly edited, poorly shot movie that just doesn't quite know what to do with the space that it's in or the people that populate it. I just cannot think of recommending this movie to any kind of horror fan whatsoever. Patrick, what'd you think?
I don't know. It's hard. I'm trying to come up with a cue-it for it, but I'm trying to come up with a cue-it for it because there were a lot of elements that I did appreciate. You know, as I said, I enjoyed the early tone that set the stage for a movie that I thought I was going to enjoy and that I was on board for. I did actually like a lot of the craftsmanship. I think it's better directed than kind of the picture you just painted, Stephen. I mean, I was just thinking about the even just the blocking within that space and how much thought had to have gone into that. Where's the gun going to be? Where's the backpack going to be? Where's this character and that character going to be? It's almost like blocking out a stage play. But yeah, I mean, as we've already gone over, it just kind of fell apart for me more and more as it went along. And it was interesting the degree to which it just like kind of, I could see it like disintegrate almost before my eyes, especially starting with something that did feel promising to me early on. So while I want to give it a cue-it, like for some of the things I did like about it, it's just not something I can recommend for the overall experience. So I guess I will go with the screw it. Chris.
Well, I'll bail you guys out. I'll give it a cue-it. I kind of made that decision earlier. I like the movie less the more I attempt to talk about it because I kind of realize how little movie there is in this. But, you know, I did think it was well made. I thought it was technically well done. The characters weren't rich, but I could tell them apart, which is kind of my main. Whenever you have like 6 characters in one of these Netflix horror movies and I can tell them apart, you're doing better than half the movies we watch.
That's fair.
So I appreciate that. You know, I thought it was kind of interesting and charming early on. It goes into some pretty harrowing places that were effective to me. I was caught up in the drama for the most part, even though it wasn't, you know, the greatest thing I've ever seen. At the end of the day, we've seen this movie before. We've seen it better before. This movie doesn't bring a whole lot to the table. It made me think about some stuff that's probably just because of my own neuroses and not the craft of the film. So you could check it out and probably have a good time with it, maybe, or not check it out and you're probably missing nothing, especially if you've seen one of the dozen other movies that involves people stuck in a place arguing with each other. Cue it.
Well, we all had close contact with this movie, so we should probably go down to the spoiler basement before they burn the bar down. Patrick, yes. You want to do your usual spiel before we head down there?
Sure, why not? I will encourage you all, as always, to visit Every Horror Movie on Netflix.com. If you were thinking to yourself recently, gosh, I love Every Horror Movie on Netflix. I wish I had a t-shirt that said Every Horror Movie on Netflix, or better yet, a coffee cup that said Every Horror Movie on Netflix. Guess what? You're in luck. We have a link on the website that says buy merch. You can go there and buy things with our art and the name of our show on it, which amazing, right? You can
Amazing.
also...
It's, the pandemic is maybe at the tail end. At least that's what the government tells me. So, things are open up. You can go outside for the first time. You can be seen. You can be in a bar, and you need a new fit, because I know your old clothes don't fit.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe you got an Every Horror Movie on Netflix t-shirt before, and you need a bigger one. We got you covered, boo.
Maybe you need a smaller one. The pandemic cut both ways.
True. That's true. That's fair. I can also tell you that we may be dropping a new piece of outerwear sometime soon, so keep your eyes peeled for that.
What about underwear?
I think you can get it on underwear too on TeePublic, but I don't know. I'll have to check on that and get back to you. If not, we'll definitely find an underwear provider. And it'll be those American Apparel ones where like your ball pops out.
Yeah, I got a meeting with a businessman who has a briefcase just full of underwear, and we're gonna go over some samples.
Also, follow us on your social media platforms of choice. We're at AmonCast, EHMONcast. We are not on Pinterest. I'm sorry. We're not on TikTok. I'm also sorry. And we're not on LinkedIn. But we are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, so, check that out. And also subscribe to us, review us on your podcast provider of choice. It gives us those analytics. It gives us those downloads, those clicks that we love to see. It gives us the feedback that we love to see. It helps people find the show. It's really just, it's good for everybody. I think that's the spiel. Should we go down? Should we go into the spoiler sewer?
The fucking SWAT team is coming right now, so grab your drink. Let's head downstairs, boys. See you in a minute.
Let's go.
Boiling up.
All right, so we are down here in the spoiler basement of the bar, ready to spoil everything about the bar.
The bar. Spoil everything about the bar.
So, all right, since we're down here, I want to talk about, the only thing that's on my mind right now is just dumping a, probably 5-quart jug of oil over your head. Like that visual, I feel, and the sound of it will never leave me. They decide that they have to, go down into the drain under the basement, and the homeless guy oils himself up and
I'm sorry, Patrick. Let me correct you.
The jug upside down. He's a person experiencing homelessness. I'm sorry.
He's houseless.
He's houseless. Is that the? I didn't know.
We try to be as PC as possible on this show whenever we can.
Yeah. Person experiencing houselessness tips this giant jug of oil over his head to try and squeeze through this tiny hole. And there's just, I don't know. There's something about that idea of just pouring that much vegetable oil over yourself that is just repugnant to me, and I feel like it's that's going to leave a mark on me. That's one of the things that I saw in this movie that I've not seen in a movie before, and I don't think I'll forget it.
It reminds me of a story that I don't know if I've told on the cast before, but I'm sure I've told one of you.
I know what you're going to say.
Did I tell you about the time that I met Hayden Christensen?
Yes, absolutely.
Wait a minute. What? Wait. This was a long time ago. I think I heard this story, but I'm so excited. I want to hear it again.
The key detail.
What a great lead. Did I tell you about the time I met Hayden Christensen?
I didn't know that you met him. I thought you just saw him.
I walked by him and I don't know. I didn't meet him.
Okay, so you didn't speak to him.
But I walked right next to him and we acknowledged each other.
All right.
He was shooting Jumper in Monroe next door to the house where my mom and my aunts and uncles grew up. And
they shot Jumper in Monroe?
Yeah.
How did you not know this, Chris?
I didn't know that.
And I did meet director Doug Lyman, and he was a fucking asshole, but that's another story for another time. I'll never let that grudge go. So they're shooting a scene where he's supposed to be out on the tundra somewhere, and it was winter, so in Michigan, so all the ice is breaking up and making mountains up against the break walls. So that's where they shot all that stuff. I've never seen the movie. I don't know what the context is. And Hayden Christensen needed to look wet. So he's wearing his full outfit, jacket and everything, whatever he wears in the movie, and just pouring gallons of oil over himself and rubbing it all over his clothes.
Ugh.
And that was he was also very tiny. He was a very diminutive man. That stood out to me.
Well, that's probably why he became Darth Vader. Saying for something.
But it was an unsettling image to me at the time, and seeing it again in this movie, it was still pretty fucking just weirdly cringy.
Oh,
how are you gonna wash all that off?
He did all that, and he still wasn't the greasiest man in Monroe.
Who's that?
And boy, it happens a lot in this movie. Like, you think it's that one scene, and then you get to the end, and fucking everybody dumps oil all over themselves. Also, Christensen is 6 feet tall, so
seriously, he seemed so small to me.
Maybe you were looking at his stunt double, his grease double.
Oh my god! What if his stunt double What if he had that good of a stunt double?
Maybe they wanted to save money on olive oil, so they hired a guy who looks like him but is half the size for that day.
I don't know. I'm 6'2", so everybody looks shorter. But
you're 6'2"?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
So,
I didn't know that. I would have guessed you were 5'11".
Have you?
Interesting.
Wait,
we haven't seen each other in person in a while.
Stop hunching. God damn it.
Well, when you're tall, you have to. Like, you don't have to, but it comes kind of naturally. I've heard other tall people explain this to me, or relate to me about this, that I just automatically have an apologetic stoop when I'm talking to people, because I just feel like I'm dominating them when I'm having a conversation. I'm trying to correct it. Don't worry.
Well, I like tall people, but 6'2" isn't quite tall enough. I like people who are 6'8", 6'9", 7 feet, because here's why.
Do you have those parameters set on your dating profile?
Well, yes. I'm only looking for women who are 6'8".
Tell us why. What? Explain this.
When I meet a tall person, I'm like, great. I know this person's gonna love me as long as I don't acknowledge that they're tall, and it works. You see a tall person, you pretend you don't notice they're tall, and they're so used to everybody being like, "Oh my god, you're so tall," or boomers like, "How's the weather up there?" And so if you just meet a tall person and treat them like a person and don't acknowledge their height, they know you're cool, you know they're cool. You have a great time at the wedding reception.
100%, because you know what we're thinking about? We're thinking about the fact that clothing does not fit us, and we're uncomfortable all the time for various reasons. I would rather be 5'11" than 6'2". It would make a world of a difference to me.
If only someone made a store for people who were big and tall.
Yeah, but I'm tall, I'm not big. That's the thing. Big and tall stores, clothing gets... why are we still talking?
Okay, for God's sake, can we get back to the fucking movie?
I thought you can go there if you're big, and you can go there if you're tall.
I found some...
No, it's big and tall, not big or tall.
Oh, god damn it. The Venn diagram is a circle.
I have found some shirts lately from a website that sell only tall sizes, not big and tall sizes. And it's been kind of a game changer.
Why are you buying fucking shirts from anywhere other than our merch store?
Because we don't offer tall sizes. If we had a medium tall size of our t-shirt, I'd have one on right fucking now. All right. So the only thing worse than the oil is in an already claustrophobic movie, the extremely claustrophobic idea of this vagrant trying to fit himself down this tiny hole.
I don't feel like we've adequately established what's going on here. Okay. Basically, 5 people in the bar have exposed themselves to the diseased man corpse in a way that the other 3 people are not comfortable with. One of those 3 people has a gun, so they're able to coerce the other people to go quarantine themselves in this janky cellar under the bar. They're trying to find a way out, or at least a way to find some fresh air, because the rest of the bar ends up getting burned down by Spanish FEMA. So they find a little drain, but it's like a football size. It's a tiny ass drain. Yeah. I mean, the drain looks so much small. It looks like no one could ever fit in this fucking drain. But sure enough, they find ways.
Football, but
it is bigger than football, but it doesn't look like that. But it is super small, maybe a foot. And so they take the skinniest guy, who is the person experiencing a housing shortage.
Well, it should be noted he's not the skinniest. The woman is theoretically, the young woman is theoretically the person who would fit best. But she's like, fuck no, I'm not dropping down into the sewer, which, sure.
Sure. And it's kind of a fun moment because the homeless guy just starts shedding layers, and you don't even realize until that point that he's as wiry as he is.
I thought that was a little bit ridiculous. I was like, he looks exactly like what I'd expect, but somebody comments like, oh, he's skinnier than he looks. I'm like, have you seen that man's face? He's so gaunt.
Yeah, I was not surprised by that. The only thing I was thinking about in that scene was how hot it must have been for that actor to wear that costume, because it was like 8 layers.
But it's excruciating because various characters at various points at the ending of this movie have to squeeze through this hole, and like I thought homeless bro was gonna die because he gets jammed in that hole in a way that would probably kill somebody.
I had the weirdest experience with that whole thing because I was like, okay, he gets jammed in the hole, he eventually gets dragged back out of it, and then for like 20 to 30 minutes maybe, it seems like that was a complete dead end in the plot. It's like, okay, why did we even try to get down this sewer? Why did we waste time in this plot? But it's because we come back to it later and everybody goes down in the sewer for reasons that don't make a whole lot of sense.
Well, and I don't know. I mean, this could just be my faulty memory, but I'm like, what was their objective with getting him down the hole? Like, he's one of 2 people that can conceivably even remotely fit down this thing. And what is he going to find down there? I mean, like, what is he going to... Like, he can't go up to the surface and get help because everyone on the surface wants them dead. At least so they presume. So you're right, Patrick. Dead end is the perfect way to describe it. But it was simultaneously very anxiety-inducing to me as somebody who suffers from claustrophobia pretty severely. But also, it just like goes on for way too long with no real end game.
Oh, yeah, they're pushing on his shoulders. They're trying to shove him down. He won't go.
They're kicking him in the head, trying to, push him down. And then when they try and pull him up, this was like also like a maddeningly stupid choice that made me kind of angry at the movie. Is like people are trying to like pull him by his fucking head to get him out. I'm like, grab his arms.
Get under his shoulders.
Yeah,
they're fish hooking him and stuff, and it's like... I guess they didn't have someone whose hands were small enough to get under his underarms, because that's what they say to our hero.
Except they're just right up there out in the open. Like anybody could have just scooped in.
Yeah.
Do you know that Alex de la Iglesia is 55 years old?
He's a lot younger than I thought he would be, actually. Because he's been making movies since the early 90s.
This is my first exposure to him, and this seems like a young man's movie. This seems like a directorial debut.
It seems like a young man's movie made by an older man. Yeah, I mean, he's a fascinating guy. So he apparently started off writing comic books, but in my research, I've not been able to really find out like what he's known for. Maybe they were only popular in Spain, his native country or something. But his first film was produced by Pedro Almodovar. And I think, I'd have to confirm this, but I think he like worked under Almodovar on something before that. He was like kind of a protege.
That tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so, I mean, they fail to get down into the sewer, and I think at that point is when the bar is lit on fire from above.
Yeah.
The older woman, who is the slot machine addict, burns her hands on the door going up into the bar, trying to reopen it, like severely burns her hands. And then they all end up going back up into the bar to find that the people who they had left behind, who had forced them to go down to the basement in the first place, are now all gone, presumably dead. And we're on to the next level of trying to figure out what to do.
Yep, the government has sterilized the scene. This is pretty standard protocol for when, someone gets sick in a city. I don't know. But we know, though, basically by studying the first disease victim's cell phone, that there may be a vaccine. But again, the veracity and nature of this vaccine is as ambiguous as the biological threat.
Right.
Oh, yeah. A nun was involved in creating it in Africa. And frankly...
Good enough for me. Good enough for me. Fauci who?
And frankly, I was confused by how they even decided these syringes were so important, because there was debate among the group about whether it was a vaccine or whether it was just contributing to the condition of the guy who was originally diseased. And these syringes of vaccine, which it turns out the original victim had in his possession, turn out to be the MacGuffin of the final act of this movie. Everybody's trying to get one of these syringes to theoretically inoculate themselves against whatever is happening, but there's really no conclusive proof. But there's really no conclusive proof that it actually works. Relatable. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Well, there's no proof that it works, but they're completely stuck. I'm trying to remember, because they find the guy's cell phone when they do manage to make it back upstairs. They go through his texts, and I'm trying to remember if the texts confirm or deny that it's even a vaccine. I remember being kind of confused about that. It's very ambiguous.
They argue about it. There are texts that seem to suggest that it is. There are texts that seem to suggest that it isn't. But I mean, fundamentally, the guy did inject himself, I think, right? Before he died, he did successfully inject himself.
And he died.
But he died and had his fucking eyes bugging out and shit.
But they rationalized that he was just too sick to begin with.
Oh, right.
When he did it. But, it's basically just you have desperate people, and they're latching on to whatever hope they can find, and they're not acting out of place from a place of reason. And, I mean, you can say that's, bad screenwriting. Oh, they make stupid decisions. But the movie, I think, is very much about people who make stupid decisions in moments of stress and crisis. So they decide, all right, we got to have these vaccines. But there's only 4 of them, and there's still 5 or 6 characters at this point. So,
5.
It just adds more tension, and that's the point where our friend person who is experiencing homelessness becomes kind of the protagonist for me for a fleeting moment.
Very fleeting.
Where I'm like, this guy, because you know what, he's like, I know what you're fucking thinking. You're thinking I'm like the crazy poor guy, so you're just gonna use the vaccines and leave me out in the cold. And I'll be honest, I was thinking the same thing. And so I'm like, you know what? Damn, this guy is actually making a comment on the state of affairs and the state of these people. And he's all, no misses on these shots he's firing. And but then, like Patrick said earlier, he very quickly just becomes crazy again and completely unsympathetic. And that was kind of disappointing to me. I thought this movie was really interesting when it took the guy who seemed like Joker and made him the hero of the movie. And that they weren't interested in sticking with that.
No, because then he just steals a shot for himself and steals the gun, turns the gun on everybody, and makes everybody start doing his bidding.
He starts acting like he was acting like Joker. Now he starts acting like Jared Leto.
He starts acting truly damaged.
So then our hero, our middle-aged gambler lady with bandaged up hands because she burned her hand on the door, fumbles the ball and drops all the syringes down into the filthy sewer. And so then we decide that every character now has to get through this impossibly small hole.
No. For starters, just Elena has to go down and retrieve the syringes.
All right.
And then Elena makes everybody come down with her.
They look down and they say, "Save us," and she whispers, "No." And then everyone has to go down the hole, and Elena's hid the syringes because she doesn't trust anybody. Cue a bunch of hijinks, tension, screaming, double crosses, murders in the sewers, and that's basically the end of the movie.
Everybody's in their underwear, everybody's oiled up, everybody's dirty and covered in feces and waste.
So thematically, we're fulfilling sort of the loop here where everyone has just been, stripped down physically and psychologically. They are acting animalistic. There's no comedy. It is just people at their most basal lizard brain, human nature for the most part, with a couple interesting moments in the sequence, but not many. And we end up with Elena and hipster tech bro and Jared Leto, and they're climbing up a ladder to escape the manhole with only one vaccine left amongst the 3 of them. And Jared Leto and tech bro fall to their deaths, and Elena escapes and exits a manhole and finds herself in, downtown Madrid, the happy part. It hasn't been cordoned off. It's still business as usual. And she's walking around like Mila Jovovich at the end of Resident Evil, and everyone's gawking at her, but very few people are like checking with her. That's, I think, a continuation of what the whole movie's about.
And then she does her date that she was supposed to see also recognizes her as well.
Yeah,
which that was kind of, I didn't like that.
That's literally like the final moment of the movie before she just wanders around some more over the credits.
I don't recognize my date when I get to the restaurant and see my date. So
she makes her wandering around in her underwear covered in shit and oil.
She makes a joke about that in the first scene of the movie, like being catfished or whatever. And it turns out like she's the one who's like accidentally like retroactively catfishing her date because she's supposed to be this like put together person, and it turns out she's just covered in human feces.
Maybe this is all about catfish. Catfish are the most common fish found in the Spanish sewer system.
Yeah, that ending was very strange to me. I mean, this entire like concluding sequence was bizarre because that's where it really descends into just like gross depravity, everybody running around and screaming and just I don't know. It was strange. It was very strange. And then Elena just like walks out. We still learn nothing. We kind of build up with this shot where she's wiggling the manhole cover open. Clearly people are staring at something beyond the manhole. We never find out anything more about what they're staring at, presumably just the bar, but it's kind of set up in a way where you think there's going to be something more to be revealed. And then she just wanders around the street in a daze, and as Chris would say, that's your movie.
I thought we were gonna see like something like it was gonna turn out. So there's gonna be some dark twist where it turns out that there's been a misunderstanding. And all these people have killed each other for no good reason or anything like that, or the vaccine is not what they thought it was or something. But but at the end of the day, this movie's not really about that. It's whether the vaccine works or doesn't, whether there's a zombie threat or not. Well, it doesn't matter. It's just about people. And look at this. Did you know that people act like assholes when they're put under fear and stress? Did you know that?
Especially people who already act like assholes day to day to begin with.
Right.
Well, yeah, I guess this one is challenging for me because it's, I'd like to try and go back to the Ebert equation of how well does the movie succeed at what it's trying to do. And there are so many like kind of red herrings for what the movie is trying to do, as I've talked about already. It seems to be more comic than it is. There seems to be more provocative social commentary than there really is, or deeper social commentary than there really is. And it just there's a lot of things that it could be, and the only thing that it really kind of commits to is what Chris just said, and what we've talked about already. All it really delivers on is this fairly simple theme that we've seen a million times before, and it doesn't do it particularly well, and it's just so frustrating because there are all these other things that it sort of like takes a stab at, and it's like, oh, I could see the universe in which you follow this thread through and do something interesting here, and it doesn't deliver. It's frustrating in the sense that you could have a movie that only tries to do this very basic thing and none of these other sort of elements that aren't delivered upon, and it almost might be less frustrating to me because at least, okay, you were just trying to do the one thing,
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to hear, well, I shouldn't say I would love to because I'm over this movie and I never want to think about it again, but I'd be curious to know, like, what was like the pitch meeting for this movie? Like, what was the like what seed did they start with? I'm so unclear on what the intentions are.
Yes.
Again, it might play very differently to a Spanish audience, and Alex de la Iglesia is very popular there, and with Spanish viewers in general. Like, he's never found much success outside of that culture, so I don't know. I mean, like, I'm open to, like, maybe I'm missing a few things here, but probably not. I don't know. I mean, this movie wasn't even very well reviewed by some of the Spanish reviews that I found online. So
I will say this intrigues me to check out more of his work as a director. I mean, his directorial touch intrigues me. I'm interested to see a movie that he did that plays with some of the same kind of material or tone that this movie does and does it more successfully. So I'll check out Day of the Beast at least soon. So there's that at least.
Yeah, that's a hoot. I've heard Witching and Bitching is really good, which has been on and off Netflix for a number of years. I would like to check that out. Like, he clearly has a good sense of humor. The thing that I've found with the two films of his that I've watched is that when he embraces his sense of humor over all else, he's very successful. Perdido Durango is a movie that doesn't seem to know quite what kind of tone to strike. And there are scenes that are very, very funny, and there are scenes that are horribly nihilistic and disgusting and pointless and reprehensible that don't kind of gel with the things that I like about the rest of the movie. But I'm with you. I want to check out more too. He's got a new series on HBO Max called 30 Coins that's pretty well reviewed. This just didn't do it for me.
Mm-hmm.
It made me want to go to a bar for real.
All right, so what are we watching in 2 weeks, guys? I think it's time for the wheel to subject us to its whims, right?
Oh, man, that wheel of death. That wheel of death is about to have its way with us, and I, for one, have never been more scared. I fear this wheel.
It's random choice time, baby. I always feel like we should explain this because I think people are understandably confused. If you don't listen to every episode, maybe you don't know how it works. We take turns picking a movie every episode. Chris picks, Patrick picks, Steven picks, and then we roll out our cyber wheel of death, which picks from all the movies on Netflix and just picks out a random one for us to watch next time, which is what we're about to do.
Yep. So cyber wheel. Let's give it a spin. Oh man, I wanna re-roll, but that's against the rules. We're watching Grandmother's Farm.
Oh, okay.
What the fuck is that?
It's a Middle Eastern movie. It says a guy's getaway to an isolated farm in the desert goes from fun to frightening when a mysterious guest crashes the party.
It goes from fine to fucked.
Grandmother's Farm. It also spawned Grandmother's Farm 2.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah. We'll check that out. That'll be in 2 weeks. We'll be watching Grandmother's Farm.
Well, at the very least, it's nice and short. It's an hour and 11 minutes.
Oh, hell yeah.
All about that.
God bless. That's like a 28-minute album. I love it.
Good. That then our episode will only be, how long will our episode be then? Yeah, 2.5 hours.
All right.
Great. Well, we've been Every Horror Movie on Netflix. Thanks for joining us here at the bar. Hope you can, if you're not already vaccinated, hope you can get fully vaccinated soon and go out to a bar yourself, see your friends again, hug some people, kiss some people.
If you're not already vaccinated, get vaccinated by any means necessary, and you know what I'm saying.
Get the fuck out there, yeah, and see your friends. Watch some horror movies with them, like we used to do in the before times. It'll be beautiful. You'll thank yourself. So for Every Horror Movie on Netflix, as always, I've been Steven.
I've been Chris.
I am Patrick, and will continue to be.
Bye-bye.
Bye.